Vayelech Shamshon Ghazata. And Shamshon went to Gaza. Vayarthame Ithazona. Vayavu Eleha. And he saw there a prostitute woman, and he came to her. Laghazatim le'amor, Shamshon henna. To the Ghazatim it was said, saying, Shamshon hath come here. Vayasobu vayehrabu lo kol halayla b'thagr ha'ir. And they lay in wait for him all the night in the gate of the city. وَيَتَحَرَّشُوا كُلَّ اللَّيْلَ لَيَمُرْ عَدْهُرْ هَبُّقْرْ وَهَرْجَنُوهُ. And they were silent all the night, saying, Until light of the morning, and we shall kill him. وَيِشْكَبْ شَمْشُونَ عَدْ حَتِّي هَاللَّيْلَ. And Shamshon lay until the half of the night. وَيَقُمْ بَحَثِّي هَاللَّيْلَ. And he arose in the half of the night. وَيَحُزْ بَدَلَتُوتْ ثَغْرَ هَعِيرْ وَبِثْتَ هَمْزُوزُوتْ. And he clasped in the doors of the gate of the city, and in the two of its posts. وَيَسْعَمْ إِمْهَبْرِيحٍ. And he pulled them up with the bar. وَيَشْمَ عَلَى كَتَفَيْهِ. And he set upon his shoulders. وَيَعْلَمْ الْرُوشَ هَهَارٍ. And he took them up to the head of the mountain, Atara Alapane Hebron, which is over the faces of Hebron. Wayahi Achareken. And it was after this, Wayehab Itha Benahal Shorek, that he loved a woman in the valley of Shorek, Ushemah Delilah, and her name Delilah. وَيَعْلُوا إِلَيْهَا سَرَنِي Pelishtim. And the lords of the Pelishtim went up to her. وَيَؤْمَرُوا لَهَا پَتِيهُوتُ أُرَهِي بَمَّهَ كُوحُ گَادُول وَبَمَّهَ نُوكَلَلُو وَهَسَرَنُوهُ لَغَنُّوتُ. And they said to her, Deceive thou him, and see thou by means of what? His great strength, and by means of what we might be able for him, and we might bind him to afflict him. وَنَحْنُ نِتَّنَلَّهُ. And we shall give to thee Ish elef wemea kasef, each man 1,100 silver. Watomer Delilah el Shamshon. And Delilah said to Shamshon, Hagida nali bam kohaka gadol. Narrate now to me by means of what is thy great strength. وَبَمَّهْ تَهَاسِرْ لِغَنُّوتَكَ. And by means of what thou mayest be bound to afflict thee. وَيُمْرِ إِلَيْهَا شَمْشُونَ. And Shamshon said to her, إِمْ يَحْسَرُونِي بِشِبْعَيَ تَارِيمْ لَحِيمْ أَطْرَ لُوهَ حَرَابُ. If they should bind me by means of 7 fresh cords which have not been dried, وحاليتي وحايتي كأحد هضام. Also I shall be weak, and I shall become like one of the men. ويعلو الله سرني بلشتيم شبعا يطاريم لحيم أطرلوه حرابو. And the lords of the Pelishtim brought up to her 7 fresh cords which had not been dried. وَتَأْسَرَهُ بَهِمْ, and she bound him by means of them. وَهَوْرَبْ يُوثِبْ لَهُ بَحَدْرٍ, and the liars in wait, sitting for her in the inner chamber. وَتُمْرَهِ, and she said to him, Pelishtim alaka Shamshon, the Pelishtim are upon thee, O Shamshon. وَيَنَتَّقْ الْحَيَّتَارِيمِ, and he tore off the cords. كَاتَرْيِنَّاتَقْ بِتِلْهَنْ عُرَتْ بَحَرِ حُوهِشْ وَلُوهِ نُوذَعَ كُوحُ. Like that, a cord of flax tow is torn in its smelling of fire, and his strength was not known. وَتُمْرَ دَلِيلَةَ الْشَمْشُونَ, and Delilah said to Shamshon, Hinne talatabi, behold, thou hast mocked and deceived me. وَتَدَبِّرْ هِلَيْ كَذَابِيم, and thou hast worded to me lies. أَتَهَجِّدَنَ لِي بَمْ تَحَسِرْ, now narrate thou now to me by means of what thou mayest be bound. وَيُمْرَ إِلَيْهَا, and he said to her, إِمْهَاسُرْ يَحْسُرُونِي بَعَوَوْتِيمْ حَدَاثِيمْ أَتَرَلُوهُنَّ أَشَابَهِمْ مَلَاكَ. If bindingly they should bind me by means of new ropes, which it hath not been worked by them any work, وَحَالِيتِ وَحَايِتِ كَأَحَدْ هَادَامْ, also I shall become sick, and I shall become like one man. وَتِقَّهْ دَلِيلَا عَبُوتِيمْ حَدَاثِيمْ وَتَحْسَرَهُ بَهِمْ, and Delilah took new ropes, and she bound him by means of them. وَتُمْرَ إِلَيْهُ پَلِشْتِيمَ عَلَكَ شَمْشُونَ, and she said to him, the Pelishtim are upon thee, O Shamshon. وَهَوْرِبْ يُوثِبْ بِحَادِرٍ, and the liar in wait was sitting in the inner chamber. وَيَنَتَّقِمْ مِعَلْ ذُرُوعُتَيْهِ كَحُوتٍ, and he snapped them, he tore them off from upon his arms, like the string. وَتُمْرَ دَلِيلَا الْشَمْشُونَ, and Delilah said to Shamshon, عَدْهِنَّ هِتَلْتَ بِي وَتَدَبِّرْ إِلَيْكَ زَعِيمٌ. As far as here, thou hast mocked and deceived me, and thou hast worded to me lies. Hagidali bam tehaser. Narrate thou for me by means of the what thou mayest be bound. Wayomer eleha imtaragi et sheba mahlapot roshi imhamasakat. And he said to her, if thou should weave the 7 locks of my head with the web, وَتِتْقَ أَبَيَّاتِدْ, and she clapped by means of the pin, وَتُهْمَرَ هِلَيْوْ, and she said to him, Pelishtim alaka Shamshon, the Pelishtim are upon thee, O Shamshon. Wayiqath mishanato, and he awoke from his sleep. Wayisa et hayatad haorik, and he lifted up the pin, the loom, et hamasakat, and the web. وَتُهْمَرْ هِلَيْوْ إِكْتُهْمَرْ أَهَبْتِيكَ وَلِبَّكَ إِنْهِتِّي. And she said to him, how art thou saying, I have loved thee, and thy heart is not being with me? The thaloth pa'amim hetalatabi. This 3 times thou hast mocked and deceived me. وَلَوْ هِجَّدْتَ لِي بَمْكُحَكَ gadol, and thou hast not narrated for me by means of what is thy great strength. وَيَهْيَ ki هَثِقَ بِدْبَارَهَا كُلَّ hayamim وَتَأَلْثَهُ. And it was as she pressed him by means of her words all the days, and she urged him, وَتِقَصَّرَ نَفْسُهُ لَمُوتٍ. Also his soul became impatient for to death. وَيَجَّدْ لَهُ et kol libo, and he narrated for her all his heart. وَيُمَرْ لَهُ مُرَى لَوْ عَلَى عَلَى الرَّشِي, and he said to her, a razor hath not come up upon my head. Ki nazir Elohim hani mibbetanahimi, because I am a Nazir of God from the womb of my mother. Imagulahati wasar mimmeni gohi. If I be shaven, also my strength shall depart from me. Wahaliti, wahayiti, kukul hadam, and I shall become weak, and I shall be like any of the men. Water Delilah ki higidlah et kol libo, and Delilah saw that he had narrated for her all his heart. Watishlah وَتِقْرَهْ لِسَرْنِ فِلِشْتِيمِ لَيَمُرْ عَلُو هَبَّعَمْ كِي هِجِّدْلِي et kol libo. And she sent and she called to the lords of the Pelishtim, saying, Come ye up this time, for he hath narrated to me all his heart. Wa'alu eleha sarane Pelishtim. And they came up to her, the lords of the Pelishtim did. Wa'alu hakesef biyadam. And they brought up the silver in their hand. Watayashnehu ala birkaha. And she made him to sleep upon her knees. Watiqrah laish. And she called to a man. Watgallah et sheba mahlafot rosho. And he shaved off the 7 of the locks of his head. Watahel l'ranoto. And she began to afflict him. Wayasar koho me'alau. And his strength turned away from upon him. Watomer Pelishtim alaka Shamshon. And she said, Pelishtim are upon thee, O Shamshon. Wayiqath mishanato. And he awoke from his sleep. Wayomer Eshe kepa'am bepa'am wihina'er. And he said, I would go out, like the time in the time, and I would be shaken free. Wahu alo yada kia wasar me'alau. And he had not known that Yahweh had turned from upon him. Wayo hazuhu Pelishtim. And the Pelishtim seized him. Wayanakaru et einau. And they bore out his eyes. Wayoridu oto Gazatha. And they brought him down to Gaza. Wayahsaruhu ban hushatayim. And they bound him in the bronze. Wayahitohen bebet hasurim. And he was one grinding in the house of the bound ones. Wayahel sha'ar rohsho l'thammeh katr gullah. And the hair of his head began to sprout after when he was shaven. Wasarane Pelishtim nehesafu lidboh debah gadol l'dagon Elohehem uleshimcha. And the lords of the Pelishtim were gathered to sacrifice a great sacrifice to Dagon, their god, and for a celebration. Wayomeru. And they said, Natan Elohenu biyadenu et Shamshon hoyebenu. Our God hath given into our hands Shamshon of our enemies. Wayeru oto ha'am. Wayehallelu et Elohehem. And the people, they saw him, and they praised their God. Ki hameru Natan Elohenu biyadenu et oyevenu. For they said, Our God hath given into our hands our enemy. Ve'et maharib archenu. And the one devastating our land. Water hirba et halalenu. And which made many our wounded or slain. Wayahi kektov libam. And it was as their heart was good, glad. Wayomeru. Also they said, Qarahu l'shamshon, wayashaheqalanu. Call ye for Shamshon, and let him make laughter for us. Wayqarahu l'shamshon bebet ha-hasurim. And they called for Shamshon from the house of the bound ones. Wayashahek lifnehem. And he made laughter before them. Wayamidu oto ben ha'amudim. And they made him stand between the pillars. Wayomer Shamshon el hanahar hamahzik biyado. And Shamshon said to the lad holding by his hand, Hani haoto, cause thou me to rest. Wahamisheni et ha'amudim atar habayit nachon alehem. And cause thou me to feel the pillars which the house is set upon them. Wesha'en alehem. And I would lean upon them. Wahabayit male hanashim wahanathim. And the house was full of the men and the women. Wathamma kol sarane Pelishtim. And all the lords of the Pelishtim were to there. Wa'ala hagag kithalothet halapim ishwitha. Haroim, Bishahok, Shamashon, and upon the roof about 3,000 men and women, the ones singing in the laughter of Shamshon. Wayikra Shamshon el Yahweh, and Shamshon called to Yahweh. Wayomar, and he said, Adonai, Yahweh, Zochereni nah, Wahazakeni nah, Ach ha'pa'am hazeh ha'Elohim. Adonai, Yahweh, remember thou me now, and strengthen thou me now. Only this time, O God. Nakama ahat mithete enai mipelishatim. And I would be avenged, the vengeance of one from the two of my eyes, from the Pelishtim. Wailepot Shamshon etethene amude hatawak. And Shamshon grasped the two of the pillars of the middle. Atar habayit nachon alehem, which the house was set upon them. Vayisamech alehem, and he leaned upon them. Ehad biyamino ve'ehad b'shimolo, one by his right hand and one by his left. Vayomer Shamshon, and Shamshon said, Tamot nafshi im Pelishatim. Let my soul die with the Pelishtim. Wayet b'choch, and he leaned by means of strength. Wayip Kol habayit al hasranim, and the house fell upon the lords, wa'al kol ha'am atarabo, and upon all the people which was in it. Vayehyu hametim atarhemit b'moto, rabbim me'atarhemit b'hayav, and the dead ones which he killed in his death were many, more than which he killed in his life. Vayerdu Echayu ukol bet Avihu, and his brothers and all the house of his father came down. Vayishu oto, and they lifted him up. Vayalu, and they brought up. Vayikberu, and they buried him. Ben Thorah ben Eshtaol, between Thorah and between Eshtaol. Bekeber Manoah Haviu, in the grave of Manoah his father. Who shafat et Yisrael Esharim Shana, and he had judged Yisrael 20 years.